Wasn't it great to see Marilou presenting? It lets us appreciate how lucky our children are and how lucky we are to have you here. Thank you so much for the sacredness that you bring to our children. So Mr. Spock says what? He says, live long and prosper. Everybody who is a bit of a Trekkie knows this. And it's meant as a form of blessing. It's meant as a form of a Vulcan blessing. I think it's kind of appropriate since Vulcan has kind of taken over South Lake Union, isn't it? That we would live long and prosper. And this blessing is similar to the one that God made to Noah and to all of us after the great flood, when he said in the book of Genesis chapter 5, he said, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. In other words, live long and prosper. So today we are celebrating the earth, and we are celebrating with our children being with us today. We're celebrating by blessing those animals that live in our homes and by blessing the earth as well. So I thought it would be appropriate to tell the story of Noah and the ark today. I actually started writing this talk at about 2 in the morning on Thursday, and the talk title I initially had was Ark, but I woke up in the morning and went, I don't know. So I changed it to something respectable like the covenant. So you all know the story of Noah, probably. It says that humankind was wicked, and God was pretty upset about it and wanted to create a flood, bring a flood. And he told Noah that Noah needed to get an ark and to start building it. And God was very specific. He was down to the minutest detail of how big it should be and what it should be made of. And then he says, and of every living thing, of all the flesh, you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark to keep them alive. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, of every creeping thing of the ground. And you get the idea, yeah? And so Noah follows these orders that he receives from Spirit, and he builds this ark, and of course his neighbors probably think that he's crazy, right? And he's talking about a flood, and they're like, what are you talking about? And it wasn't just a small boat that he was building. It was this humongous, ocean liner that he was building in the front of his property. And then he calls together all of the animals 2 by 2 into the ark. And of course, his neighbors think, again, that he's a little crazy. But then what begins to happen? Begins to rain. So I actually would like you to help me in creating the sounds of rain as we continue with the story. And so we'll go from this side of the room to that side of the room. But the rain started a little bit slow. So if you would just sort of, and then on this side. And then the rain started a little bit more, so we go to 2 fingers. Then it started to rain a little bit more. And then it rained even more. And it rained even more. So if you would keep that rain sound going just for a little bit and choose whichever form of it that you would like. But it rained for 40 days and it rained for 40 nights, and they thought that the rain would never end. And it rained and it rained and it rained, and then all of a sudden it started to slow down just a little bit. Until eventually the rain stopped. However, everything was flooded. And so, as a result, there was nowhere to go except to stay within the ark. And they stayed in the ark, I believe it was for 150 days or longer. And Noah sent forth a raven, and the raven came right back. And then 3 times he sent forth a dove, and the 3rd time the dove came back with what? An olive branch, right? The symbol of peace. And then once the floods receded, they came out onto the land, and God made a covenant with Noah. And he said, as long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. So the ark and Noah's family represent our spiritual consciousness. And sometimes we get hit with the floodwaters of challenges in our lives, right? Sometimes we get hit with a tsunami of challenges in our life. And this story is a metaphor for us, the ark being our spiritual practice. And we gather together into the ark all of our resources. We gather together our divine wisdom. We gather together prayer and meditation. And when we are faced with floodwaters in our lives, challenges in our lives, it is then that we gather into our own ark in order to receive that guidance. So what are some of the floodwaters that you may be experiencing or dealing with right now? Perhaps you're having challenges at school or with a friend. Perhaps there has been some changes in your life. I think one of the floodwaters that we're probably dealing with collectively is the loss of Richard Levy, because that just is so, it's just very hard to take in and to believe. Last week, as I said, we were singing, and that is when he made his transition. And at home, I had lit a candle for him, and we said some prayers on Saturday night. Caroline and Kelly and I. And Caroline said that on Sunday morning when she got ready to go out, the candle was lit, and as she was getting ready to leave, it went out. And it went out right around the time that he made his transition. So when we are experiencing floodwaters like these kinds of experiences, what do? We gather into the ark. Yes, we gather into the ark of our consciousness and spiritual practice, and we turn to the truth. And the truth is that we don't die, that physically we may lay down our bodies, but we don't die. We continue to exist. And it is in honoring and affirming that truth. And nobody affirmed that truth more than Richard did, and believed it with all his heart and soul. When I went to North Carolina to say goodbye, we were talking about, this whole dying thing, and he said, being there and being here, it's the same thing. I'm not going anywhere. It's the same thing, and I know that as clearly as and surely as I know it as I'm sitting here today with you. So every time we have that kind of floodwaters with a loved one who is making that kind of transition, I invite you to go into the inner ark. So Rami, I'm going to ask you to cue up the video and lower the screen. I thought since we had kids here today, it might be fun to watch a video. But in some ways, like Noah, we are facing a flood, although we're actually facing a drought. But we're facing a flood experience, aren't we, in the form of climate change. That is something that is being visited upon us. I went to Oregon last week, or this last week, for a regional convention conference. And Mount Hood has like no snow on it. I mean, it was like bizarre. I was like, where's the snow that's supposed to be on that mountain? You may have heard a couple weeks ago that 35,000 walruses came ashore in northwest Alaska because the sea ice has disappeared. So things are happening kind of rapidly. Disastrous results are beginning to happen because of climate change. And so I wonder, I asked the question, could Noah's Ark be kind of a template for us? As we look and as we face the challenges that are ahead of us? And I think yes. I think we gather together our resources. So whereas Noah grabbed all the animals and put them in an ark and got his family and food, we may not go out and get the animals and put them in an ark, but we can gather our resources collectively. We can gather together our wisdom and put it in the ark of wisdom, of consciousness, of spiritual consciousness, so that we can begin to transform this experience that is before us. And I see changes, as I'm sure you do, I see changes happening all the time. Particularly around our animals, where we really seem like we're connecting with them and joining with them and recognizing their humor and their intelligence, right? Anybody that's lived with an animal knows the sense of humor that they have and how much fun they are to be around and how intelligent. It doesn't matter if it's a little bird or a rat or your dog or a ferret or your rabbit. You know, they're carrying this incredible consciousness and this incredible humor with them. I also see kindness in the caring of animals from people. And the video that I want to show you is something that I referenced in a talk about a month ago. And it takes place in Brazil, and it's the beaching of the dolphins. And the guy who films this is just happening to film this nice waves and what a peaceful day at the beach. And then all of a sudden, something happens. And so I'll just turn it over to the video. The amazing thing about that it was less than 4 minutes. It was actually 3.5 minutes from beginning to end, where these dolphins ended up on the beach, and without discussion, everybody just stepped forward to help. And that's what I see. That's the consciousness change that I see, is that everyone is willing to step forward and to help. And we will know the way. But again, there was no committee, there was no discussion. It's like, just do it. They just did it. And on the other side of that, there was a story that took place in China last year. And a young woman by the name of Yang Yun was, this is a weird thing, but she was applying for a job to work with the whales in their aquarium, beluga whales. And this was what they had for the contest. The contest was you were to dive in the tank, which was Arctic cold waters, and then have no scuba gear, no breathing equipment, and dive down 200 feet and then come back up. That was part of the deal. So this young woman dives down, and when she gets to the bottom, the water was so cold that it caused her legs to cramp, and she couldn't move. And she was stuck, and here she is, she's on the bottom of this tank, and of course everybody can see her because it's a tank, and no one is there to help her except for the whale. And the whale sees that she is struggling, and he swims by, grabs her leg, and pushes her up to the top. She says, "I felt this incredible force under me, driving me to the surface. And it carried her right up to the top so that she could breathe and, of course, survive." So we see this helping taking place, not just on the human side, because the humans are doing also a lot of damage, but we see this help not only beginning on the human side, but it's happening in our animal kingdom as well. So today we bless the animals that live with us, that bring us comfort, that make us laugh, that are our companions, our daemons, our soul carriers of the family, of the home. So as we go from this place, my question to you is, what are some of the flood experiences that you've had in your life? Let's do a little more rain sounds. Move it around the room. So when the rains come in your life, when the floods start up and the rains and you're not sure exactly what you're going to do or how you're going to face it, recognize that you have an inner ark, which is your spiritual practice, that you can gather together all of your resources as you come together in spirit and follow in the footsteps of Noah. I was going to say noses, which is Noah and Moses together. Noses. It's a new guy. Noses. He's going to carry us through the climate change. Noses the Great. So as Noah did, he sent forth the dove, the sign of peace, that everything will be all right. God said it this way, or the Bible said it this way. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Or as Mr. Spock said it, live long and prosper.